Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody, again. Quite a nice turnout, actually. I thought you would have all gone home by now, so thank you for staying. I think we've got a little bit more time now to basically, we wanted you to sort of leave today with, I suppose, as much hands-on knowledge as possible within the available time. I really hope that you found today inspirational. I mean, I know I have. I've really enjoyed the other presentations, and I don't know, what do you think? Give us some feedback. Has everybody enjoyed the day so far? I've heard quite a lot of people say it's been a really, really good day and some great presentations from not just myself and the others, but, the Vectorworks team particularly. I think there's some amazing new stuff to come out. What I'd like to do, though, if I may, is always really difficult, and I hope you'll respect this a little bit. I'm not here to offer myself up to troubleshoot all your problems. I don't really want people to come at me with this can't happen. But what I am here to do is try and be helpful and try and empower you and try and answer a few questions for you about how you might begin to get started on BIM for those of you who haven't really maybe progressed past 2D. I will at times offer myself up to you, to the audience, with some questions. As I won't necessarily answer every single question that gets thrown at me. I'll try, but if it's a particularly tricky one, I may fend that off or come around to that a bit later. So really bear with me. I haven't really pre-prepared anything. I really haven't here. I'm just going to kind of freewheel a little bit. But I think in some ways, hopefully, you'll respect that and enjoy it because of that process. So basically, I've kind of titled my talk, Creative BIM and Demonstration, really. And I'm really talking about the 7 steps to get started on building information modelling, or BIM. You can see one of them is to do with the project setup. How do you go about setting up a project for 2D or 3D from a 2D file? So I'll run through that with you. And I will run through some of these objects. I'll touch on the space tool, I promise, because that's a nice, easy one to show and how powerful that is. And I'll talk a little bit about managing your data. I will definitely use some of the hybrid tools, walls, windows, doors, slabs, perhaps a roof. And I'll talk about the overall concept of replacing data. So instead of redrawing everything, like we would with traditional drafting and lines or drawing with polygons and rectangles, every time the wall thickness changes, you've got to redraw that wall. Well, we should be able to replace a wall with a different style of wall. Replacing data is a real cornerstone of the BIM process. Definitely using sheets and viewports. I mean, I imagine nearly all of you are using sheets and viewports these days. Hands up, who is not? Anybody not using sheets or viewports? Everybody else, I'm assuming, is hands up then, yeah? So, I mean, a few years ago, if I'd asked that question, people would have been like, no, we don't really use viewports. We're still printing from design layers. So hopefully we've moved on beyond that now. What that means is the separation between the way you design something and the way you present it via the mechanism of a viewport gives you a huge amount of flexibility for the level of information and the type of information you present and show. It's one of the cornerstones of a BIM workflow, using the same information presented in lots of different ways. And finally, I might just touch on IFC and how we kind of, get model data out of Vectorworks. So as part of this, I'm going to also show you another project, which I would have packed into my presentation this morning, but I kind of suddenly realised today on the train there was no way I was going to get that in there as well. And I thought it was an interesting enough project to show you how I've developed this project using a BIM workflow and the benefit of that. And I think you'll get that when I show you the project a bit later at some point. In fact, it's not this project at all, so just ignore those. Just before we kind of get started, I'll also just run through a few other projects. This, for me, was a bit of a kind of light bulb moment in terms of my career. Back in 2006, I was involved with Quattro Design Architects based down in Bristol and Gloucester, who are quite a large firm. And really, been working with them over the years and helping sort of train them and teach them Vectorworks. But they were really busy, and I had a bit of time. So basically, they hired me to come in as a consultant, and essentially, to begin with, they just wanted me to draw up some elevations. I kind of persuaded them, okay, this is quite a complicated little project, actually. Lots of funny angles, lots of curves. I'll have a go at modelling the building. So essentially, this was my first attempt at BIM modelling back in 2006, which I think you'll agree in timescale of BIM is actually quite early days, I'd say. And even then, while we have none of the sophistication in the software that we do now, I was able to model and produce a really nice set of working drawings. And that, for me, convinced me that 3D, and particularly BIM, was definitely something that was going to catch on. So I've been looking at this for quite a while. I've also got a few other just 3D examples I was just going to show you. This was something I did back in 2000 using the massing model tool. Even then it was pretty powerful. You probably recognise this tall pointy building. Anyone recognise that one? In London, give you a clue? Canary Wharf, yeah. So it was a fantastic project to work on. We worked on the white bit, which was Wood Wharf, the master planning for that whole area. And as I say, done on the old MacBook black ones years ago. This is about 15 years ago. So ever since whatever it was, Minicad 8 or something at the time, I've been really quite keen to kind of exploit 3D in a BIM process. Sometimes I just get purely involved in visuals as well. So here's a few examples of a few nice visuals. But what I like about the software is there's never been anything that I couldn't model in one way or another. You've seen today how some of the advanced subdivision tools and the marionette modeling, wow, I cannot wait to get started on that. I've got a lot of relearning to do. I feel like I've got a huge amount of relearning to do. I'm sure all you feel the same, but I can only encourage you to do that. As a user base, if we all do that, then it's good for our own individual careers. It's also good for, the user base in general. And I think we can all help each other. So I'm really excited about what might come. And I think I would encourage you all to share your ideas and post things to YouTube and Twitter. In this age of social media, it took me a while to catch on, but I'm maybe starting to see the light a little bit on that. So, certain things like this. Years ago, I would have jumped from Vectorworks into Cinema 4D, which is a lovely program that I love. Also, globally owned by the Nemetschek Group, so I think I'm allowed to mention it. The guys won't mind. Don't think any of the Vectorworks guys are here, so that's okay. But now, actually, to be honest, you can do all this straight in Vectorworks. You don't really need to go to Cinema for the high-end rendering anymore. Renderworks has white card rendering built in at a click of a button. It's really, really nice. So, just a few examples of the kind of projects I've been involved with over the years. Here you can see a very complicated site, really exciting project down in Weston-super-Mare in the West Country, working with Ferguson Mann Architects. George Ferguson, the ex-president of the IBA, is his practice. But again, another sort of turning point in a way. This was done in about 1999, so quite early on. But it was modelling historical buildings, very fiddly, very ornate, really existing, tricky buildings to model, and also very modern, crisp, sort of clean-lined, straight-walled buildings. So the fact is you use different techniques for the kind of project and architecture you're modelling. And the beauty of Vectorworks, it really has the capability to do both aspects. So you don't necessarily use one technique, you might end up using two. I'll just sort of show you. You can see, it's quite a complex little site. The ability to reference one building into another file, even 15 years ago was available. A bit more awkward than it is now, but it was there. So you can split your project up and model it in a more simplistic fashion. Here we see it's easy to take your model into Cinema 4D if you want to do some really whizzy, flashy, Hollywood-style animation. And that's a nice bit of software I'd encourage you to look at if you want to go beyond the rendering and animation that Vectorworks offers. Here was a nice example of collaborative work using SketchUp and Vectorworks. You know, we sort of mentioned SketchUp a few times today. I'm sure plenty of you are familiar with it, and it is a very useful tool. What I really like about SketchUp is it's kind of got everybody into 3D. And now people are beginning to realize, while it has some nice capabilities, actually Vectorworks has all those as well, and a lot more. Maybe I would encourage you, if you're using SketchUp, be open-minded to trying to do those things in Vectorworks, and I think you'll probably find it can offer a huge amount more. Hopefully that's come across a little bit today. But the beauty here is we were able to import the SketchUp model of the top of the pier here, and the rest of the context was modelled in Vectorworks. And, you know, doing a nice little animation, nice and simple. This was a crazy competition that we didn't win, but it was a good fun one to have a go with. Okay. Sometimes when we present things, you know, it doesn't take much. A little bit of creativity and a bit of fun in iMovie. If you've got a Mac, you've got iMovie for free. Put a bit of rain on, put a bit of sun. I mean, just do something a bit different from your competitors. And it doesn't take much at all. So I really encourage you, especially as we start moving down the 3D, into the 3D world of modelling, move away from 2D paper. Don't just think about paper as a presentation means. Use the computer, use the screen, you know, use your projector, use Vectorworks Nomad and iPads, get your clients involved. And my feeling on this is they love it. They really engage with it. And you find that they have a lot more to say because they understand it. Whereas with drawings, we all know our clients can kind of nod and, okay, but they don't really understand the drawings like we do. As soon as you show them a 3D or walk them through something, they immediately get it. 3D PDF? I mean, it's a gift, isn't it? Everyone has access to that now. So, you know, it's another reason not to just bury your head in the sand and draw. And I'm sure most of you here are modelling in 3D, yeah? But I really encourage you, this is the year. You know, if you're not going to do it this year, when are you going to do it? So I really would hope to leave you with that today. Bit of inspiration, get going on 3D. Okay, there we go, an old slide there. Let's go to Vectorworks. And as I say, if I may, I'm going to try, very ambitious, bear with me on this. Might help if I actually shut down some of these other massive files in the background. Let me shut some of these down. You can see I've actually got some pretty big files open at the moment, and with the latest 2016, you know, it's actually handling it very well. I've got 4 or 5 large, complicated projects. I might come back to that one. Let's shut this one down, because we showed you that already. And if I may, I'm going to kind of just start from scratch. I'll get to a certain point. I will make an excuse that I haven't prepared, here's a slick design of a building, and I purposely haven't done that because I hate following step-by-step instructions, and I think sometimes it's just nice just to go for it and see what happens. The building I'll design will probably be, you know, a failure, but as long as you understand the process, I really hope that you'll gain something from this. Always tricky to do standing up as well, so please bear with me on this. Okay, so let's say, first thing I'm going to do, I've got my scale, 1 to 50. That's a decent scale to design at. In Vectorworks, choose the scale of design that is appropriate to the level of project you're currently engaged in. So on that New York project, clearly it was a 1 to 500 type scale. You know, for house design, it's more 1 to 50 scale. We always work at 1 to 1, but we view at different scales. Don't model at 1 to 1 though. You know, you should be viewing at the scale that fits. Second rule is, when you kind of get started on your project, and you can see I'm literally just going to map out some kind of idea for a building, always try, so I'm going to right click, I'm going to add surface together. So that will bring me on to another little aspect to Vectorworks. When I do my professional teaching and training, it's my other role as well as being an architect, I do a lot of teaching and training with many practices, and quite a few of you here I've sort of tutored over the years, which is nice. I really recommend editing your workspace so that you have an enhanced workspace. And I've got one here that I've tweaked. You know, like tuning up the engine of your car, you know, get a bit more horsepower there. Make it easier to use, make it quicker to use, and make the keyboard shortcuts very logical. This is always something I'll do when I work with the practice, but by all means, you know, it's not particularly hard. You can learn yourself, or, you know, drop me an email and we can talk about it, but it's something that I would really encourage. Okay, now, one feature that I do love on 2016, finally, is kind of, you know, the palette docking. Thank you. Every time you resize your screen now, you don't have to rejiggle your palettes. That's a nice little feature. Not really a feature, is it? It should have been there a while ago. Sorry, guys. But it's going to make my life a lot easier. Okay, so now I've started. Let's say I have started off my paper. Well, don't ever do this. Don't go and import a survey file. I wouldn't recommend starting a very complex BIM model, you know, up in Sheffield or wherever the survey happens to import. Okay, we can talk about origins later, but I would encourage you to essentially take the object, put it onto the center point here, and just put it back onto the user origin or the local origin. And you can see that under there, if I hit the B key, I've got my blue cross. This is my internal origin of the file. Now, the reason that's important is if you start modeling there, whenever you change the view, your information is right there. If you model up in Sheffield, for the rest of the life of the project, you will be constantly chasing the information around where you've modeled. So it's a really important thing. Model centrally. When I'm ready, later on, I can translate that origin to be up in Sheffield when I'm ready, or I can do it via referencing onto the site model. I don't need to do it now. I can model nice and easily. So my tip is, make life easier for yourself. Don't model at a funny angle. Don't model with a funny origin just because that happens to be where somebody else imported the survey file. Make it easy for yourself and model in the middle of the paper. Okay, so what I'm going to do then, I'm going to take this basically weird form that I've created here. I've got my reshape tool. I'll try not to do too many shortcuts. So let's kind of just tweak this a little bit here. One nice thing here, I've got the reshape tool. I can click on this point, kind of stretch this out, or if I click on this edge here, you've got really nice sort of sensible tools for reshaping. So what I'm going to do is take this and start to work from sketch to building information modeling mode. So right from the beginning, I can create a concept. I can right click, and a command that I love and I use quite often is create objects from shapes. So what this allows me to do is, rather than getting my wall tool, I'll come back to that one. So here's my wall tool palette, which I can undock if I want to. Let's grab my wall. I'm not really bothered, I'm not really sure what wall type I'm on at the moment. So if I click up here, a nice new feature they've added in 2016 is the ability to visually see and preview your walls. It was a very listy way of doing it before, and you had to know what all the coded things on the list were. But now, it's really nice. So all the libraries that I have available in my resource browser are now accessible directly from the tool that I want them in. And that's, you know, a really good workflow improvement. So I can essentially drop down to my simple walls. You can see all of them in there. Look. Nice. Or I can go to my more industry standard ones. Okay. In fact, let's go for these ones here. So let's just have a concept wall. And it's just a basic wall. So I could trace around this shape. That's fine. And when I'm doing that, I can backspace if I make a mistake. Or I can hit the U key on the keyboard to cycle through those modes up on the top left. So I can sort of trace around the inside, outside, or center line. Let's just go for it in a different way. I'm going to right-click, create objects from shapes. And I can turn that polygon into a number of things. So I can turn it into walls. Okay, so that's my first little step. When I click OK, I've got the options here. Do I want to go left side, right side, or center? Kind of always forget which one it is. Let's try the right side. So that was the inside. Let's undo. Let's do it. So I always get it wrong, don't I? if there's 50-50, you'll always get the wrong one. Let's go the left side. So that's gone outside my polygon. So here's my polygon, here's my walls. Now let's take this object here, let's right-click again and turn it into a slab. So there's many ways to create a slab. I could create it from my walls, but this is also quite a quick way. Just draw it as a polygon, because if I'm sketch designing, I probably haven't used the BIM tools, I've just drawn shapes. So I can now turn those shapes, when I'm ready, into slabs, or spaces. Let's do a slab. Don't want to delete the source poly. Actually, I won't delete it just yet. So let's have a quick look at our design in 3D. So it doesn't particularly look very exciting or three-dimensional at this time. So all I really need to do is go to my navigation palette or my organisational dialog, whichever. How many of you use this palette to do all your organising? Quite a few of you. I would encourage you, while this one is a good one to sort of set things up, because it's a very sort of large visual way of doing it, I found really much more productive is to use the browser here. So the navigation palette is a real gift. This is one thing that fundamentals users miss out on, but then if you're a fundamentals user, I'm really afraid to say you're missing out on pretty much everything to do with BIM, so don't even bother trying BIM in fundamentals, really. You can do 3D modelling and extruding and so on, but not the BIM stuff, really. You've got a touch of it, but it's kind of limited. I often get asked by architects, what's the difference between architect and fundamentals? What's the difference between an architect and, I don't know, an artist? It's quite a lot. You've got to have different sets of tools to do different jobs. The right tool for the architect is, the clue is in the name, it's the architect package. If you can, go for Designer, which has all the landmark stuff as well, and I use Designer, as you can see. Landmark is an amazing package. It's amazing when you come onto the site and the context, and you saw some presentations on that earlier. So, I always say to an office, have one designer, a few architect, a few Renderworks, that's pretty much the mix. Probably not so many fundamentals, I'm afraid to say. Okay, so all I need to do is right-click on my model, my layer. Personally, when I'm doing 3D, I would come up with a little way of identifying that these layers are three-dimensional, i.e. mod for model, and that will do it for me. You can come up with your own system, but that seems to work well. So I'm basically going to chuck in a three-dimensional height. Instead of an elevation of 0, that's fine, so that's the datum. Layer wall height, I'm going to plug in at 2700. So immediately those walls spring up to meet that height, and the reason for that is they were bounded to that particular layer height. If I wanted to, I could double-click on them, I could stretch them up, I could manipulate them in a completely free-form fashion, but what I really want to do is just link them to the layer height. And the beauty of that is, if my layer wall height changes, let's go 4 meters, you can see really quick, it's very easy to decide. Now, the earlier presentation today when they did the cube, I thought was extremely impressive. Those guys have, I think, had a few months working on a presentation like that. I've had a few hours and half an hour on the train. Using stories is a very advanced method of setting up layers and linking walls and everything to various story heights. And I do encourage you to do it. I think it's okay to say it's quite complicated. And if you haven't really started on the BIM approach, I would recommend you avoid that to begin with, and you just go for a more straightforward layer height and relate things back to a layer height. Now, we can still step the components of walls and slabs easily. We just do it in a slightly more manual way. But I would recommend, if you haven't started on the BIM route yet, and your first attempt, probably don't use stories. You save that for later when you really feel you know what you're doing. So let's go ahead and drop in some other aspects. So I've got my slab down here, you can see. So just like we moved on a bit earlier, one of the key cornerstones of BIM is to replace data. So I'm going to get my magic wand tool. In fact, before we do that, let's just go to top plan view, get my wall tool, let's go and draw some more walls in. So let's go down and choose, this time, from my vast array of wall types, some internal walls. Just quickly whiz into the settings, and I'll just make sure the settings are correct in here. So really the key here is I want to have these internal walls linked to the layer wall height, but I might only want them to go up to the underside of slab. So I will give them an offset value to bring them back down again from that 2700. That's fine. I'm going to just basically save that as a wall type. So when I go ahead, if I have my auto join button turned on, which is hiding away on this laptop, there it is. Turn that one on. You'll see the walls attempt to join. Let's also turn on my angle snaps. My kids have been messing with my computer. So look, I'm just going about this in a fairly rough and crude way. If I wanted to do it a bit more accurately, I'll just show you something. I'll hover over this point. Say I wanted to go 1.5 meters from there. Without drawing a construction line, I hit the G key. The G key is called the floating datum. That allows me to tab along to the length input, type in a distance. So now I've got a reference point exactly 1500 away from where I started. So it's a very nice little tip. Without having to draw a line, then offset it and trace over the line, delete the line. We literally just hover over a point, hit the G key, and then tab, tab, tab. Let's go 1 meter, click. So I kind of start from 1 meter away in any position. So that's a nice little tip for you. Okay, so after you've done some internal walls, the next tool to master after the wall tool on your BIM journey through BIM is the joining tool, and it's the tool here. Have a look at the junctions, decide what kind of junction it is. Is it an L junction or is it a T junction? Very straightforward tool. My advice to you on all of these BIM tools is a little mantra that I've developed. I always teach my people who come to see me. Tool, mode, maneuver. Just keep repeating that. Tool, mode, maneuver. So what does that mean? It means you click on the tool, and that's kind of easy enough. Even better than clicking on a tool, I really recommend you learn your shortcuts. It's the best way to improve your speed and productivity and, leave work a bit earlier, make a bit more profit maybe, do a bit more work, whatever you want to do with your time. Drink more coffee. So learn your shortcuts, learn the tool, but also use the mode bar. So what I mean by that is that I can pretty much access about 30 commands just by using shortcuts with my other hand. So I do 4 for rectangle tool, click, use the U key. I can cycle through all of my modes. Obviously you can't see me using the keyboard, but you can see that I'm not clicking on tools to access any of those drawing tools. So that's my definitely first empowering tip is edit your workspace to make the shortcuts easy. Secondly, learn those easy shortcuts. And thirdly, remember the Vectorworks mantra, if you like, tool, mode, maneuver. So what that means is you get your tool, you go for your mode, get the right mode, then you do the maneuver. And the trick I find with learners is people who are starting out, they always forget the mode and they don't look at what they're doing. So, keep an eye on this. Okay, very good. Right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go into 3D again. You can see my internal walls have kind of come in quite nicely. I've got them set back 150 or 300 below the slab. So, okay, let's say we're ready to move on a bit now. I've decided what kind of walls I'm going to go for. So what I'm going to do is get my Magic Wand tool. I've made the shortcut W. So if I double click W, it just pops up with the settings for the tool. I'll try not to do too many shortcuts today because it's pretty annoying. Let's double click on the tool. So if I select by object type, if I click on the wall, of course all the walls get selected. If I double click W again, if I said instead of object type, let's go for wall style, then if I click on a wall, only the external walls are selected. Now that tool is remarkably powerful. Anything in your project you can search for with the wand tool. It used to be called custom selection, but it was a bit fiddly to program it. But the amount of time that tool saves is incredible. So definitely a tool top of the list. If you're not using this one, have a go with this tool. It's a fun one to use. Good, so now I've got my walls, I can click replace. you can see I've got a nice visual way of replacing those walls. I can either go through it. This, for me, is still a little bit listy. It's a bit of a listy method. As an architect, I tend to be quite a visual person, which you guys will be. So I'd rather go to my resource browser, Command R, pop that up, and essentially scroll down, find a wall type that I'm interested in, and you can see I've got lots and lots in here. Let's go for, flick over to something else, double click, and basically I can apply. So let's do a right click and apply. And when I come to replace those walls, I can choose which side of the wall, i.e. the inside face or the outside face I would like to reapply by. They're going to be different thicknesses. So this is really critical, how you replace your walls. You don't want your area getting bigger or the external part of the building getting larger. So you can see I've immediately replaced those walls with something a little bit more cheerful, possibly. Let's see if we've got a nicer brick in there. But the beauty is it's extremely fast. I can replace them at any time in the project, and it's something that I can kind of keep doing to my heart's content, really. So sometimes you have to repair a few joins, depending on how you've done it and whether you had auto join on. Overall, a relatively satisfying and quite a quick effect from generating those walls. I'll move on in a minute now. I've done the walls. I've done the slab. I'm going to move on to windows and doors. But does anyone have any quick questions on the walls, please, before I move on? Okay. How many of you are finding that method, yep, fine, we work in that way, or a few of you, hopefully? Yeah? Are some people finding that interesting as a way to work, or do you want me to move on a bit more rapidly? Is it okay? Are you finding you're learning something now? Yeah? Good. That's the main thing. Okay, let's move on then to windows and doors. So I'm going to go to, in fact, I'll just show you the curtain wall tool because that is quite fun. Let's click on this wall here. Let's have a look. That's not going to be very nice if we've got a curtain wall. So we'll just join those. You can work in 2D or 3D quite a lot now. And it's very sort of interactive, the way that you can kind of stretch things around in the design. So depending on how you want to work, 2D or 3D, it's up to you. You'll see that I didn't regenerate my slab there. So what I can actually do now is do the slab in a slightly different way. So I go to the pick mode, and I will simply go around picking the walls that I want to define the slab. I'm just going to give you an alternative method, really. The nice thing about doing it this way, when I click tick, I generate the slab, and you'll see that now when I stretch my walls, yeah, that is better, really. It's the right way to do it because the slab is linked to those walls. It's a slightly more intelligent sort of method of working. So let's do one more wall replacement. Let's have a look quickly at the curtain wall. So for some reason I want some curtain walling here. I told you it would be a bad design. You don't get the idea. So essentially, let's flick to another library. I think in one of these, this one. There's some curtain walls, standard curtain walls. Yeah, here we go. So basically, I can kind of choose roughly the type of curtain wall I want, and I can simply right-click and apply, swapping one wall type out for another. And the beauty, as Samit showed earlier, I think, with the curtain wall tool, it is really, really flexible. You simply double-click on it, and you can either reshape it or edit the curtain wall. And it's really flexible, actually. You can add bits in, you can move, delete mullions, so if you want to delete that one, it's fine. No problem. You can have quite a lot of fun with it and be really creative. And I think this came in last year in 2015. It kind of gave an inkling into where Vectorworks was heading in terms of it very much is, quite a creative method of customizing, creating sort of curtain walling, that sort of thing. Any of these panels, by the way, can be selected with the curtain wall tool, with the panel tool. Oops, sorry, that was the wrong one. That was the grid tool, that's the panel tool. And I can just right-click and insert a window or a door or, whatever I want into those. Let's put a window in there. No, we won't do that. Let's put two up. Let's get rid of one of these and put a door in. Edit curtain wall. So let's go back onto my pick mode, pick the mullion, and back onto the panel mode of the curtain wall. Select those and right-click and insert door. Now that I've got those doors in there, I can easily go into the settings for that particular tool, and all the usual sort of suspects of doors and window settings we have available. So if I want to make that into a glass door and a set of double doors, you get the idea. Click OK, pretty much sorted. If I want to now match that one to that one, the eyedropper tool, double click the eyedropper. Wonderful tool, very simple to use. It picks up all the parameters of the object that you would like it to and matches them, drops them onto something else. So pretty much I'm just going to click everything, click to pick up, go to my bucket mode and drop. You can see how fast this is. Okay, good. So let's just move on to the traditional doors and windows. Let's spin round. Let's kind of anchor that there. Let's get around to this side. So doors and windows. Let's start with the door. Double click. You can see it's very, very easy to work. It likes, like other software that I'm not going to mention again. If you want to work in 3D, you can. If you'd rather work a bit more accurately in plan, you kind of place something. And this is what I would say. Sketch modeling, you're just putting the idea there, a door or window here. But then very quickly you want to make it accurate. So you flip, you set position, and this is where you measure from a particular point and you type in the exact dimension. 225 times, I'm going to type the equation here, 7. So I can type in any dialogue in Vectorworks. Very nice little tip is a calculator. So you never need a calculator with Vectorworks. That saves you about 10 quid these days, doesn't it? You just type in straight into Vectorworks and it will do the calcs for you. But it is very nice when you're designing something. And I can do that with more than one object at one time. So set position, click, click. Actually, that's probably not going to be sensible, is it? Yeah, they both move by the equivalent amount. Okay. Let's move on a tiny bit more. Those doors are a little bit close together. Actually, they were inserted into panels, weren't they? So we won't move those. So let's now put some windows in. We'll do this in plan view. Again, I could choose this button, which essentially is the one I just clicked on, but this time I'm doing it a bit more carefully. And I'm referencing the exact position I want that window from the beginning. This is what I love about Vectorworks, actually. You can work in a very sort of, I don't care mode, let's just try some things out. Or you can be, let's be a bit more rigorous, let's be more accurate. And either way, you can get the same result. You can really sketch something, then make it accurate. And having that confidence, knowing that, means that you don't have to model it right in the first place. Other software, you do have to get it right because it's a real pain to edit. In Vectorworks, it's easy to edit, so it doesn't matter too much if you're just trying out an idea. So 225 times 10, I could probably just about work that out. But I could then do a minus 10 if I wanted for the brick dim. Finally, let's get rid of these doors. Let's do a little command here, duplicate array. I've got this set up as a right click, so this is one of my things in my workspace. So we're going to have 5 copies at 1500 spacing. Hopefully I'm going in the right direction. Yeah, cool. Bit of a clash there with that door. Now, the beauty is with using these parametric objects is that I can use my wand tool again. I can go up and select via object type, but also add in a size criteria. So when I do that, it means that only doors of that size in the design will be selected. So essentially, I kind of don't need necessarily to use symbols as much because using plugins ultimately is quite flexible. If I want to change all of those doors to glass doors in one go, I can. Traditionally you would have had to use a symbol to do that. you don't need to do that so much in Vectorworks now, because the parametrics are getting to a point where they're sort of powerful enough for you to modify them all in really a couple of clicks. So you can basically see how quick this can be. So let's go to different type of window. There's some options in here over the years that are really, really kind of nice. You can see BitBlap, I think, was talking about the new sliding options, various things. So let's go to sash. Let's go to, yeah, maybe it's because I've got that curtain wall window selected, so I just need to deselect that one, I think. Yes, that's probably it. So now look, I have the option to change all of these windows really rapidly. And let's just quickly increase the OpenGL options. Another thing that I love about Renderworks is just a simple one, is edges and shadows. And you've got now a really nice feature. BitBlap didn't mention this. It was a lovely feature. You can beef up the line weight. How does that look on screen? Can you see that okay? So you can kind of present it in quite a sort of marker pen, you know, to your client quite fudgy. Or we can make it a little bit more refined. Let's go for 1. And there we go. Right, I don't really want round windows. I think I really want diamond windows. No, I'm only kidding. I'm going to go for rectangular windows. And I'm going to go to different type. Let's go to custom sash. Custom sash for me is the one that I often find myself when I've got a more complex window. And it just allows you to kind of build any window you would like. So, you know, you can build the kind of window with different size sashes. Each one can be operated in a different way. It's not a very sensible window, but, you know, you get the idea. So sash windows, custom sash, you know, very weird window. I told you it would be. Give an idea. Okay, now the beauty is, though, as I say, all of this design is still quite editable by using this BIM method of modeling. So, you know, let's move on a little bit now. I need to try and get the roof on, and also I wanted to show my other project, didn't I? So we're running short of time, and I need to get a full set of drawings out by 5 o'clock, as is ever the pressure in architecture. Before we go home, full set of drawings, please. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to quickly put a roof on.
Jonathan, could you just show how you repair the corners with your curtain wall beads, basically?
Yeah, what I would actually do is I'd separate them. I wouldn't turn the auto-joining on. I'd probably extend that. I'd turn off the auto-join function, and I would literally just butt that junction up there. So without the auto-join, it doesn't join. And then I would get my capping tool, this tool here. And essentially, I would just cap the construction round to decide, you know, what kind of junction I wanted there. And go into that in a little bit more detail. Okay? So the auto-join, sometimes you want it on, sometimes you don't. Okay, right, let's motor on. Right, really quickly then, single-story building, luckily. I'm going to get my polygon tool, and I'm going to save a bit of time by whizzing round to shrink a piece of cling film around the building. Didn't quite go as I was hoping, and the reason for that, I think, is those walls aren't joined. So you just join those again. It might actually be because those aren't joined now. It's always a good lesson of a live demo. If one thing doesn't work, then something else will. So let's try a different method. Let's get all my external walls. That's all the walls, isn't it? Let's go for wall style. And let's select those as well. I'll try this. So I'll try a second method. If one doesn't work, I'll often do this. Create roof. This might work, hopefully. So thickness, let's just give it a generic thickness. Bearing height, yeah, that's all okay. I'm just going to click OK. My roof is created. Now, to make it look a little bit prettier, I'm going to borrow something that I've done on another project. So I'm going to whiz over to my currently open projects. And the nice thing is, you know, over time, you will have all done this, I'm sure. You've built up a nice sort of set of textures and things like that that you can kind of reuse. And this is one of the greatest aspects of Vectorworks, It's the ability to reuse something that you've already created on one project. Now, quite a few of the guys highlighted this. Even something as simple as putting a slate texture on, instead of me taking 10 minutes to go to Google, find some slate, make a Renderworks texture, fiddle around with it, I don't need to do that. I need to do it once in my life and then move on. I've got that texture forever. Same with the wall type, same with curtain wall types. All of the BIM tools have the ability to create it once and use it forever. So in architecture, look, it's a wonderful profession. We should devote our time to the creative aspects of what we're doing, not the very repetitive, mechanized, very boring drawing walls, drawing roofs, drawing all the build-up of a slab. We used to do that by hand. And now times have moved on, and the fees are never there to spend that kind of time. So for me, the BIM process makes architecture more fun, definitely makes life more profitable, and it means that you can actually get a lot more done in a short space of time. We can click on any of these points, and maybe not there, let's change that one to a gable. So any of these roof, you might kind of start off, I'm just going to save at this point, just in case, bound to crash before we finish, isn't it? Let's just save that. Not that I think it will, but you can see I'm just kind of tweaking the roof quite heavily. If I wanted to cut some holes in, I can actually just use a lovely tool, the clip tool, literally just to rub out some areas of the roof. And it will cut holes in roofs and slabs, all sorts of things. I could also put some roof lights in, but I haven't really got time for that today. That'll do just for now. Good ventilation. Okay, so on my roof there, I'm going to turn off the walls. And I'm just going to do one more little command where I select my walls. I'll try this one as well. And I'm going to basically fit the walls to the objects. So essentially, I'm fitting those walls up to meet something that I've modeled on a different layer. So the roof could be on a different layer, but it isn't. It happens to be on this layer. If I'd modeled the site, I could even fit the walls down to meet the site. So this is a very nice command. It means that you don't have to worry too much about complex modeling of the walls. You just modeled get the site or model the site, and you can see it did a nice job. Even the curtain wall has responded quite nicely. You get the idea. Right, let's get on and get some drawings out, if I may. I'm hoping this is handy for you to show you how quick, once you know some of the tools, how fast it can be. Obviously, I tend to go through things a lot more slowly when I'm teaching people properly, but I hope you've learnt a little bit. So basically, what I'm going to do is a fun little command called create multiple viewports. This allows me to create pretty much all the views of my drawing in one click. They're all a bit scattered over the place, so I'll just kind of click update, and you can see, not far off, full set of drawings really. The beauty is now, when I go back, if I go back to my model, if I make a few changes in here, of course, all of those viewports will be updated. And that's the beauty of BIM. It's one of the cornerstones of BIM is a coordinated set of information from a single model. Now, to make them look good, I'm probably not going to have time for that now in 10 minutes. You've got the gist of that, so if I may, I'm just going to skip over to a slightly more considered project and show you how I did that. But basically, this other project I will show you was done in exactly the same way as this one, albeit over a little bit more time, with a little bit more thought. Okay, so I'm going to open up this file here. Sorry, this one here, house type 3. And I'm also going to open up another one in a second. So let's have a look at the structure of this file. Here in this file, I've got some sheet layers. I've also got some design layers. So my design layers, if I look at them, are essentially, they look like 2D. When you look at them in plan, they look pretty 2D, I'd say. I can click on this button here to hide or show the detail. And that was something was highlighted earlier. Lovely little button. Just means, planning drawings, building regs drawings. Planning drawings, building regs. It'd be lovely if you could just do that, wouldn't it? You're kind of halfway there. Don't tell the client. If only life was that easy. Okay, so you can clearly understand how I've built this model. I've also got a few other things like stairs and stuff going on in here, which is a fun tool. Quite a complicated one to work out, but that's fun. And I've got a really nice bespoke front door, and I've kind of modelled that in a slightly more involved way by using what I call a symbol. So I've custom modelled that door because, you know, maybe the plugin didn't allow me to put a porthole 3 years ago, or a year ago when I did the project. I think it does now. Features that were in the software now maybe weren't there when I started the project. So the answer has always been, you know, don't sort of give up and cry and think, oh, well, this BIM's not for me, we can't do everything we need to do. You know, you take it as far as you can do, and then you find another way. And the beauty with Vectorworks is the flexibility to allow you to try a few different approaches. Some things are really fast, and some things are a bit of a pain. Gradually, as time goes on, there's less things that are painful and more things that are really fast. You know, I can't wait to start using 2016 in earnest on my next project. But what it does give you is flexibility, that's for sure. Okay, let's go to my other layers, and let's kind of turn on the upper layers here. In fact, I'm going to swap over to this end unit. This is a slightly different layout, this one. And I'm kind of just build up the building layer by layer. That's all I've really done on this project. Very straightforward. The organisation of those layers, simply they sit one on top of the other, 0 to 2700. The next layer starts at that height and goes up. So think of a layer as a thickness of space to draw in, not just a flat sheet of paper. Okay, so clearly you can see, hopefully, what looks like a nice little model there. As I say, there's some beautiful features that help you model the building really rapidly. Now, we've already, everybody seems to have mentioned the clip cube. You know, we all love the clip cube. How many times has it been mentioned today? A little bit overdone now, almost. Oh, boring, the clip cube, but it is cool. The first time you do it, it's great, isn't it? You know, you can see I've got edges on, I've got shadows on, it's ultra responsive. You haven't seen this yet on the clip cube, though. Use it as a modelling tool, not just a presentation tool. So I hold the B key down, I get my really quite unique X-ray fill mode, kind of get into the model. If I'm clever, I can hold the Z key down and zoom in, and perhaps select something within the model. Did I get that? Not sure I did. Let's go good old-fashioned scroll in. Select that. So I've got some stuff in there selected, hopefully. If I click the clip cube now, what it does is very clever. It isolates the geometry just around that bit of the design. So it's a fantastic tool. Instead of having to turn things on and off to model them, I can tunnel into that model, work on just that one area. I can easily just expand it a little bit, you know, click on that object there. All the options still work, so, you know, if I really want to make a round table and have some different dining chairs, well, I'm not keen on those particular ones, so let's change those. You get the idea. It's a really fun way to work. I can save a view as well. So I can kind of come back to that later. So I think here's a couple that I've kind of got here. I've got a ground floor plan. There's a living room that I just saved. I've got a sofa, clip cube, there we go. I've got a stairs one here. So you can see it's very easy for me to work on the model without having to turn things on and off, essentially. And it's, you know, this is the basic stair tool. Very, very nice tool. I love the clip cube. Now the ability to plan section, i.e. generate a top-down view at any height, is absolute gift, really. So create section viewport, put it onto a sheet layer, click OK a few times, you know, there's a section. And the beauty is I can look up or down. So if I wanted to do a reflected ceiling drawing, I just copy off that viewport, reverse the direction, click update, and now I'm looking up. Another thing that I really like is perspective sections. So perspective sections are awesome. They're kind of really interesting drawings in my view. Never really done a looking up perspective section before. I'm not sure how this is going to turn out. Yeah, okay, that's quite interesting. James Sterling would be proud of that one, I think. These are free drawings in a way. They are very communicative drawings. They're ones that your clients respond to and they can understand. They don't take long to produce, and they do actually communicate a lot of information about clashes and potential spaces that you haven't really considered in 2D plan. Okay, good. So what we've done is we've created our little model here, just showing you how to create a couple of sections. Now what I've done, I've basically gone to another layer in Vectorworks, and I've used something very powerful called a design layer viewport. So each of these bits of building is an entire viewport, and that entire viewport assembles together various design layers. So it's like a lump of information. Think of it almost like a giant symbol for the whole building, but it's not, it's a viewport. Now that viewport can be from the current file, as it is here. It could be from a colleague, so I could reference somebody else's layers if I was team working. And now with project sharing, well, that'll blow your mind. There's lots of combinations. But what it means is I can very quickly try out some ideas in here. For example, if I select that entire terrace, copy it down, mirror it across, it's really not heavy at all. And the reason for that is the information is just repeated a few times. Okay, so it gives me flexibility to try something out. I know that if I edit one layer back in the design layer, those changes will propagate through to this design layer. So design layer viewports, in essence, a very useful tool for designing. They're not sheet layer viewports just for creating the drawing. You can see I'm able to modify and spin around. Fantastic opportunity if you're doing large-scale developments, say 500 houses. You might have 10 different house types, model each one up in a separate file, reference it into a site plan, viewport it around the document. Then if you need to update house type A, you just update. All house type A's around the site will update immediately. And it works very, very well dynamically. Okay. Hopefully that's something for you to have a look at. If you've not used design layer viewports before, they're very similar. You just go create viewport, and instead of selecting the good old sheet layer, go up to design layer and do it. It's really, really easy to do. Okay. Right, I'm going to finish off now. I know we're short of time. I really wanted to show you what happens then with this project. So this particular building type, here are my plans, and you can see I've just kind of, for today, I wanted to show them presented in both sort of planning method and more building regs type construction. You've seen this before, so it's nothing particularly clever. What I hope is, though, you'll agree that, from a fairly simple model for planning, I can generate quite a wide range of types of drawings. Hopefully they look good on screen, maybe not as good as on my screen, but so I'm scrolling through. How do they look? Quite nice method of presenting. You've got quite accurate rendered view with a bit of hidden line on top. That's one that I quite like. So to do that, I've used Renderworks styles, a Renderworks style. On top of that, I've got hidden line. And a really great little tip is when you first present to the client, let's do this one here. Put some sketch on. I heard someone whisper it. Yes, it's easy. Put some sketch on. Make it nice and loose. Give it that SketchUp-like look. Nobody's going to worry too much. You can explain the design isn't fixed. Now, the latest Renderworks has a massive range of sketchy type styles. Gone a bit over the top there, but it's pretty loose. The client's not going to complain too much about the detail. Okay. Here you can see my absolute love for the perspective section and how that works. But they are quite clear drawings, aren't they? And by hand, they would take a long time to produce. So here's the time that we save by laboriously producing 2D coordinated sections and elevations. That time comes back to us to do a better design or make a bit more money or, say, a bit more time with your family, whatever it is you want to do with your time. By investing in your skills, by developing a different workflow, you will save and transform what you can do in the limited time available. And I really hope that that's one thing that you'll leave with today is a bit of inspiration to carry on wherever you are in your journey on the road to BIM. For me, it's ever evolving. There's a whole bunch of new tools and new techniques and new workflows in 2016 that's going to make life a lot easier. But I hope you can agree, we're all lucky enough, if we're existing Vectorworks users, I'm just quickly scrolling through, to have a great tool. And, there's no barriers there now. So whatever your personal place is, keep going on your journey. If you haven't yet started on BIM, don't keep making excuses. Give it a go. Everyone said that to you today. Have a go. If you're on the road already, keep practicing. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. There is some heartache and there will be some frustrations, but I really hope that's what today's been about, inspiring you to kind of go forward. Just show you this really to finish off. No Renderworks, very unsatisfying, very grey, very boring. Renderworks, cheery, coloured, fun, much more real world materials. It's a no-brainer, isn't it? We're architects, we like working with materials. I won't say any more. I think Renderworks is now, for me, it's become essential. I hope Vectorworks eventually will just only offer Vectorworks with, maybe there's an option without it, fundamentals, but all the other products really kind of ought to have it bundled in. It offers a vast variety of ways of presenting your design, and I really like this kind of very graphical look for some phases of the project. You can see now we've got this lovely feature called surface hatching. So, all this brickwork is actually a 2D hatch just laid onto the 3D model, and there's no extra work involved, and you can get a really nice result. So for those practices without Renderworks who are doing 3D, but you're still going through annotations and drawing some brick lines on and putting materials on. Anybody doing this still? No? Couple of nods? Okay, well, that's great if you're not doing it, but I do meet a lot of practices who are still doing this. It's kind of, you're halfway there, but you're so close, it's really worth having a go. So this will give you a bit of an idea of some of the, that's quite a fun one, just to finish up on maybe, a few of the different styles that Renderworks can offer. And I would encourage all of you to create your own. And the beauty is, if you create them as a Renderworks style, then you can save them forever, share them with your colleagues, maybe even put them online one day, and there'll be a whole host of things that we can share. So as a community, I think the Vectorworks community is quite strong compared to other bits of software. I think it's really important we help each other, really. So I think on that note, I'll begin to wind up. If anyone does want to stay for a minute, we can answer a couple more questions. If you had enough, then that's fine as well. But thank you for listening, and I will take a few questions if so. Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
In terms of productivity and speed,
Yeah.
if we don't compare it to AutoCAD and Revit and even single designer, how do you rate Vectorworks?
It's a very difficult question because why would I need to use ArchiCAD or Revit when I can do everything I can in Vectorworks? So I can't answer it. All I can say is, I don't know. I can't imagine. I don't know. It's a very difficult question to answer. I find Vectorworks really quick and really productive now that I know what to do. You'd have to put me side by side to a Revit expert. Yeah, I do quite a lot of refurbs as well. I haven't shown any today, but I do quite a lot of existing buildings with extensions. For that technique, I model in a slightly different way sometimes for the existing building. Sometimes the existing building is better modelled as extruded shapes because the walls tend to be all over the place. So you have a bit more control, although that's not the only method. And then you can create auto-hybrids of the existing building and then put it against the BIM, more BIM-ish modern stuff as well.
In terms of the library,
Yeah.
is it much larger than other libraries?
I think the library for Vectorworks is pretty immense. You've got a really good library that ships with it. You've got a very good library with the Vectorworks Service Select. And not only that, because it can import such a wide range of file types, any of these things like SketchUp files or 3D Studio can be created as Vectorworks libraries. Also, things like the point cloud import now, I think that's, really good for historical buildings and existing buildings.
What about editing families, editing objects?
Well, families are symbols in Vectorworks, so same thing, you double-click them, you edit one, they all change, but clearly you don't always need to work in that way. Yeah, well, that's exactly it, what I was doing with the plugins. So, if I click on the window here, get my wand tool, so I'll do object and size, click on that window, as long as I'm on the right mode. Let's turn the size off. Oh, it's because I had something else selected. Let's do that off. So you can see all those windows are now selected, so I can just literally change the parameters of all of them. It's pretty straightforward. Okay. Any other questions at all?
Does that have ducts and pipes and all these?
There is some basic MEP stuff, but I'm not a services engineer, so that's for someone else. I want to give them my IFC model or whatever format they can do it in. I would expect them to do their bit in whatever software is good for them. Vectorworks is very strong at lots of disciplines. I'm not a services engineer. I don't need it to be good at that. Do you know what I mean? So I think you would use something much more dedicated for that. So DDS CAD or something. Pardon?
Or linking the models to see if there's any clashes.
Yeah, well, that's where IFC would come in. So we would do that detection in, say, Celebri Model Viewer or something else. Again, I think every bit of software has its own strengths and weaknesses. Vectorworks is pretty broad on the design side for architecture, landscape, interiors, all sorts. Obviously it's not a structural design package or a services package. You can do some basic modelling of ducting and things. I have done that before, but I don't want to be a services engineer. They should be doing what they're doing and giving me their models essentially. Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah. Two questions. Most of the windows and doors
Yeah.
they kind of always entered into the centre. They just kind of went into the centre of the wall type.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean? Is there a way to kind of edit it? So, for example, like you had that wood returning, or like you wanted to have like full width of the bit. Is there a way to set the window back?
I mean, yeah, definitely. There's lots of options. I can essentially push them forward or into or out of the wall using this thing called plan offset and wall. I can obviously put full width jams on for a window like that. I certainly would. And yeah, I haven't shown you that, but there's also within the settings, there's a wall returns button. Again, yeah, to return the brick or the block. You can do it, yes, yeah. And it all takes a little bit more time than I showed you today. But yeah.
And my second question is, can you import DGN files into Vectorworks?
MicroStation DGN? No, don't think you can. Native MicroStation DG, DWG, DXF, PDF, pretty much anything else. Not DGN files though. Okay, thank you. Not directly anyway. Hello.
Could you please show us again how to create multiple viewports here on Mongo?
Yes, I like that question. That's a very nice, easy question. Thank you. View, create multiple viewports. Tick the ones you want. Click OK. Choose the rendering style. I'll do hidden line, but I'll turn the surface hatching off. And what I'll do is I'll actually do OpenGL. Let's do that because that'll be nice and fast with edges and shadows. Click update. That's it. It's super fast just to create a quick set of starting point drawings, really. Then you can make it all look really nice. Okay? Yes, my favourite little trademark tip. So that's actually really easy. I'm giving far too much away now, but I'm going to show you this one. This is a good one to end on. Think about it, it's actually quite straightforward. Instead of showing all of those viewports, I just turn them off. Update. Pull up the viewport. Go and turn the next one on. Turn that one off. Click update. Da-da-da. Yeah, really easy to do. They look good. Everybody likes them. My favourite secret given away now, but you know, it's a nice little bonus. I think when you see this, when you see exploded views like this, for me that kind of sums up BIM as an image. It's showing that you've modelled in layers, showing that you have modelled in an organised approach, and you can then present the information together. I've got a book for you, and exploded. So I really encourage you to have a go with those. They're great fun. Okay, very easy to do though. Make sure you have a go with perspective sections as well. Okay, any other questions? Well, thank you very much for listening. Oh, go on, one more.
It's just about the kind of door types. We've had trouble, say, making a bifold door, like 3 or 5 leads or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
there used to be one where it could open 2 leads or with a double bifold.
There's always, you know, there's always an option that you can't make. I mean, every year Vectorworks make it so there's less of those, but there will always be something you can't make. So there's a few approaches. As I say, one of the approaches is to essentially, a bit more time consuming, but you kind of explode the model and then you essentially remake it as a symbol, a 2D stroke 3D symbol. And then you, look, that is actually what that door looks like. All the data from the door is there. All the, see, how do they say it? Energos? I would say energy. Well, what would you say? Energos.
It's a Greek word.
Energos. Well, I'm saying it wrong. Energos. Energos, I would have said. Okay, Energos. All the data's in here if I want it to be. But in terms of what it actually looks like, I'm really tricking it to use my symbol, which I have custom modelled. So a little bit of custom 3D modelling, not hard, you know, a couple of extrusions, and maybe also a 2D symbol diagram, you know, just drawing what it looks like on plan. So the old 80-20 principle, maybe it should be the 90-10 principle these days. You know, 90% of things are quite easy, the last 10% are tricky. Don't let that 10% put you off the benefit of the 90%. Some people throw their toys at the pram, oh no, rubbish BIM, it can't do, some practices I know, you know, it can't do this particular window. They get so hung up on the tiniest thing. All the rest of the benefit of what we've all seen today somehow goes over the head because they get obsessed about one little thing they can't do. And they're waiting. They're still waiting. Oh, well, when will it be able to do this? You know, well, just try a different way. So there's always a way to achieve something. Remember, you can always fudge things in annotations as well. I'm not recommending fudging, but it does get you out of trouble sometimes, doesn't it, Luke? Everybody needs a bit of fudging sometimes. So it's all right. You can fudge the occasional thing. Okay. So yeah, they're pretty flexible, and you can make most things that you need to do now, but you can always explode them, and with a little bit of custom skill, you can make your own. Okay? Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. Okay. Are you going to shoot off?